different situations. And again, just looking at some new vocabulary and talking about how we get data that's not skewed, okay? So we're going to talk today about something called undercoverage. So that's a new one. Something called non-response. And then look at some other characteristics of taking a sample that could lead to bias. All right, so kind of two new words to look at today. So let's take a look at some surveys. All right. So, and it's asking us what's wrong with these surveys. And let's just take a second and talk about them. All right. So here's the first one. The mayor of Springfield is interested in finding out the average age of people in his city. He obtains a list of all the landline telephones in the city and then contacts a simple random sample of 300 people. He uses the data from the sample to estimate the average age of all the people in the city. Okay, so let's make sure we understand what's going on. All right, so he's got all these people in the city, and he chose 300 people who have a landline telephone. What is that? Yeah, it's one of those on the wall, right? Anybody here still have one? Okay, my parents still have one. You have one too? Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, my parents still use theirs, which I think is even funnier, right? Because if you can't get them on their cell phone because they're old, they can't hear, you call the house phone, and they will eventually answer at some point. So he's only talking to people who have an actual phone hanging on the wall, all right? Now, what's wrong with this survey? He's only going to get old people, all right? All right, so he's only going to get older people, right? Because they're the only ones who probably still have a landline telephone. Most of us are walking through life now with a cellular device so that we can be contacted at any point in time, all right? So that we're never away from what's going on, okay? Do you think by talking to only the older people that he's going to overestimate or underestimate the average age for his community? Overestimate. Okay, it would be an overestimate by a lot because they're older. Okay, it would be an older estimate. This is a type of survey that's referred to as undercoverage. Okay, it's referred to as undercoverage because I'm only talking to one group of people. Right? Had I just picked, what would happen if he had only chosen people with a cell phone? Probably would have been underrepresented, right? He probably needs a good solid mix of both groups, okay? So taking people with a certain type of telephone is going to lead to some skewedness in your data, right? It's either going to be skewed to young people or skewed to older people. So we refer to that as undercoverage. We're missing some people. Okay, in order of getting our data. All right, let's look at the next one. So the administration at a school wants to know the proportion of students that did not do their homework last night. They select a simple random sample of 100 students, and they send an email asking if they did their homework. Okay. Of the 40 responses, okay, 6 students said that they did not do their homework last night, okay, which is only 15%, right? What's wrong? Yep, we're only talking to people who have the internet or who are checking their email, okay? So what's wrong? Only people with the internet. Okay. Only people who check their email. Do you check your email every day? Okay. Notice we get a little mixture of response there. Okay. Same would happen if you ask teachers that too. All right. What's another problem that could have happened? If you got an email from your principal that asked if you did your homework, you might just lie. Right? You might just lie. Okay. People could not tell the truth. Yep. That's right. Don't tell the truth or just refuse to answer. They'd be like, oh, I never got an email delete, right? this is what we refer to as non-response. Okay, I can just choose not to answer, right? And it's going to make a difference in the data. Do you think the administration will overestimate or underestimate the true amount of people who did their homework?
I say over because, like, if they lie about it, it'll be more. If you said underestimate people that did, I think it's underestimate.
I think it's an underestimate. Yeah, I think it's an underestimate for sure. Like, I wouldn't tell the truth. I mean, probably. You know, I think it would for sure be an underestimate. So, you know, just a different situation. Like I said, this is what we refer to as non-response. We can lie or give an inaccurate response or just not respond at all. Okay. All right. And then let's look at this last situation. Okay. So there's this Boy Scout, Peter M., that wants to know the proportion of people in his neighborhood who support the Boy Scouts. All right. So he takes a random sample of 30 homes and he visits them while wearing his uniform. Okay. Now, that to me doesn't seem really terrible at just first glance. Okay. But there is something that's wrong here. People could not tell the truth, right? Why would they be more likely to not tell the truth if a Boy Scout's standing there looking at them? Yeah. Okay. They could not tell the truth because he's standing right there in his uniform. Okay. And the fact that he's wearing his uniform can influence the responder. Okay. The fact that he's wearing his uniform could influence the response. And that's what we refer to as a response bias. Okay? So if you pull up to Walmart and let's say that the firefighters are standing there taking up a collection of money, all right? If they're in their uniform, I'm probably a lot more likely to dig around for the loose change in my car when I see them as I pull into Walmart and drop something in the bucket versus if they're just a random person standing up there with a bucket. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so that's like a response bias. They do something that influences my response. Okay, and so do you think that his answers he's going to get is going to over or underestimate what people really think? I think it would be over this time, right? Because he's wearing his uniform. It's going to influence people to want to say they support the Boy Scouts.
You have one of his fellow peers.
Exactly.
Without the uniform on, and then go to the same house that he went to
and see
the difference.
And see the difference. Yep, you're right. Because let me tell you, it's those little Girl Scouts that stand out there in their cute little uniforms with them cookies at the Kroger. It's really hard to say no. Y'all, one day I was having a couple years ago, moment of weakness. I had been sick and I'd gone to the doctor and gotten a shot. And I come back to pick up a couple things for dinner, and there they stood. The little kindergartner brownie girls, you know, they little bitty. Hello, would you like to buy some cookies? I sure would. And the next thing I know, I got 5 boxes of cookies before I go home, But anyway, so those are different types of responses. So let's just organize that real quick and talk about all the things. Okay. So our 3 different things that we talked about today. All right. So the first is under coverage. All of these are going to lead to bias. Okay. So under coverage. All right. And with other under coverage, some people can't be chosen or aren't chosen. Okay, so it's not equal representation. Right, so under coverage, some people can't be chosen. Or not all people are represented. Okay. Hey. It's the next 2 days, right, that y'all are gone all day? Okay. I just want to be sure I wrote it down right. Okay. So there's undercoverage. Then we go to non-response. And so with non-response, we have that people refuse to answer or can't be reached. Right, so non-response. If I just make phone calls, not everybody's going to answer a call. Okay, do y'all answer spam numbers, by the way, numbers you don't know? I don't either. But my husband answers every one. I'm like, what is wrong with you?
It might be somebody.
That's what I mean. That's what a friend of mine said. She goes, what if it's somebody that my kid's with that I don't know and my kid's hurt? And I'm like, okay, that's a good point.
If I feel like it'll be like a natural number.
I answer unknown numbers. I just hang up once I realize it's me.
I don't know, but I'm ready for the election to be over so all those people quit calling me. It's constant. And they text and all the things. All right, and then the last one we talked about was response bias. That was our third one. Okay. And response bias is where we, the interviewer influences the response. Or people don't tell the truth. Okay, so like I said, all of these are things that cause bias in our studies. Okay, so all of these cause bias. So we're just trying to avoid those things if at all possible. Okay, so let's look at this one situation. It happens to talk about something with a presidential election from a long time ago, 1936. Okay, so they say that one of the most famous flops in survey history in a statistical study occurred in 1936 to predict the outcome of the presidential election between Republican Alf Landon and Democrat Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The magazine Literary Digest sent out 10 million ballots to its subscribers. They also sent ballots to registered owners of an automobile or a telephone. Okay, so about 2 million of the 10 million were returned, with a large majority favoring Landon, but yet the election turned out to be a landslide for Roosevelt. Okay, so Roosevelt won by a lot. Okay, how do you think undercoverage is represented in this survey that they talked about? Who did they send it to? They only sent it to certain groups of people. Okay, what are those groups of people?
People with with cars.
Yeah, if you think about 1936, who owned a car in 1936? Rich people. All right, rich people. So they only surveyed the wealthy. Okay. Okay, they only surveyed the wealthy, so that's definitely undercoverage. Okay. Now, they sent out 10 million ballots, but how many did they get back? 2.4 million. All right. So how does non-response lead to bias?
Some people didn't.
Yeah, most people didn't respond. Okay. In fact, only about a quarter of the people responded, which is not very much. Okay. So only 2.4 million even responded. Okay, so just talking about what's going on. Okay. And then the last one, so if the magazine followed up with the people who didn't return their ballots and was able to get responses, okay, so if they followed up with the other, 7.6 million people that didn't respond, would this eliminate all the bias? No, okay, it wouldn't. Why not? Yeah, it's still just the wealthy. Okay, so that's kind of what your questions are going to be like today. All right, they're going to give you a scenario, and you have to talk about, is it undercoverage, is it non-response, is it response bias, that kind of thing. Okay, so nothing too terrible. And then let's look at those last 3 situations, and we're going to be good. When we get back, we'll be ready to do our practice. Okay, this is our last lesson. This quiz tomorrow is not bad. Okay, I think you'll all do really well tomorrow. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. It says, how long before school starts do students get out of bed on average? Administrators survey a random sample of students on each school bus one morning. How could undercoverage lead to bias in this study? Yes, okay. Does it take you, we don't represent the drivers or the walkers, okay? Okay, or people who are brought by their parents, okay? So we left out some people, all right? So there were a lot of people, groups that we left out, okay? So do you think that the time from the bus kids is going to be greater or less than the average for all the students at school? Okay. Yep. Okay, so we're talking about how early do students get out of bed? Okay. So our bus students, are they getting up earlier or later?
Earlier.
They're getting up earlier, right? So I think it'll overestimate, because most of us probably aren't getting up that early. Okay, so you really have to think about the situation so that you're picking the right one.
I'm gonna start getting up at 7:30.
Oh, I get up at 5 every day.
I get up at 7 so I can go to Chick-fil-A.
Oh, that a girl. My daddy has to be at the hospital at 5 tomorrow.
I'm not. No.
Okay.
Well, I say like 7:15 because I definitely later.
All right, it's lunchtime. Let's go.